opposite in our marriage relationships. There was more than just me. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 3. This is the will of God, your holiness, your holy living, sanctification. Basic meaning of sanctification is to be set apart, separated unto God and from that which is sinful or defiles. And he's going to tell us that in verse 3 that sexual immorality, which would be any sexual relationships or activity prior to marriage, outside the marriage bond of a male and a female, is what God calls sexual immorality. And as Christians, we are to abstain, not commit sexual immorality. Well, what else? That each of you know how to possess his own vessel, your body, in sanctification, holiness, and honor, not in lustful passion, like the Gentiles who do not know God, and that no person transgress in this matter of sexual propriety. Do not transgress and defraud your brother in the matter. What does defraud mean? Defraud means to satisfy your sexual appetite, desires, fantasies, whatever it is that is drawing you sexually, whether it's the same sex or the opposite sex, that you do not violate the Word of God, lest you end up taking to yourself from someone else that which rightly belongs to their marriage partner when they get married, and doesn't belong to you, no matter how much you profess to love them, and no matter how much profession you make that we will get married, and we are engaged. Typically, the devil uses engagement as a license for sexual intimacy that holy and God-fearing and Bible-obeying young people do not do prior to engagement. But somehow engagement, the devil makes people think that because you promise to be the other person's mate, and one of these days we're going to get married, that it's okay to increase the sexual activity because we're promised to each other. And so what happens? What happens is you increase the physical contact. And it's all because I love you. It's not lust. God forbid. It's holy love. And I just can't live without you. And you light my life. You, whatever verbiage. Some people are really good at verbiage. Really good. And the more experienced they are, and the more they have lived in the world and been wicked people, the better the line they have. Wicked actually, or wicked up here. And so you justify this, and what does physical contact do if you're a normal human being? If you're a normal human being, there is something different about having your girlfriend's leg, thigh, pressed up to yours than your brother's when you're in the back seat. Your brother, you tell your brother, get your leg off me. You never say that to your date. Why don't you say that to your date? Well, obviously, there is some psychological, physical difference in how you view physical contact, right? And there is no way that you can, normal, healthy male, especially, who is more aroused by sight than women typically are, sight to start with, attracted, and then touch. May not do a thing for you ladies. You may not even think about it. You grew up with a bunch of brothers. There was no sexual overtones, fighting, wrestling, hitting each other, what all in your family, and you think this is what you do also with your boyfriend. Well, most boys are keenly aware of where your body is. And if you're touching them at all, they are keenly tuned in to that, although they might act like they don't even notice it. And typically, they will do that to see how much further you're going to get closer. And they're evaluating who you are, girls. They're evaluating who you are. And when this happens, you're creating sexual desires that cannot be righteously satisfied. Touching, loving, physical contact is the foreplay for sexual intercourse. God designed it that way. One father I knew of was very upset. He felt like and he used a phrase that irritated the young man. What was, I don't know if I can remember what it was the guy was reported to have said, that on their date you guys are doing sexual play or something like that, which incensed the guy because he wasn't trying to be a seducer, he's a Christian guy. But the father understood physical design and viewed what the guy was doing with kissing, hugging, touching as part of a prelude to sex, because typically, unless it's just a self-centered, animalistic person who is interested in nothing but themselves, they care about the other person enjoying the physical relationship as much as they do. Now, I guess there are people who are so self-centered that either male or female, once they have the sex act, that's all they're interested. They don't want any further intimacy, touching, loving, cuddling. It's over. That's not cool, unless you think that's cool. But typically, I assume most people are going to be doing this intimacy within the context of, I love you, I care about you, you are important to me. Yeah, hopefully. And there's that mutual reciprocity. Well, I love you too. And I care about you. And it is just wonderful to have you in my arms. Why? Because it is. There's a big difference between having your girlfriend in your arm and giving your son or your brother a hug. Do you know that? I well remember Nathan, my youngest son, his is not a touchy-feely guy at all. We felt like part of our education of him is to help him to be able to at least know when to give hugs and what all, because after all, he's going to get married. And so every once in a while, when one of my things is I like to affirm my love to my family, to my children, with a hug, with a pat, with that type of thing. And so I say, Nathan, give me a hug. He was 19. So he comes over and stands there. And I give him a hug. And he lets me hug him. He says, why don't you go find your wife? Yeah. It amused me. It didn't irritate me. That was Nathan. I said, man, I'm not interested in my wife. I'm wanting to give my son a hug. I love you, dude. Did you know not everybody likes to be hugged? I didn't know that. Do you know that? I don't think that's the norm. There are some people who only want to be hugged when they want to be hugged, and they don't want to be hugged otherwise. They're very much, don't invade my space. When I hugged my son, there was no thought, no feeling, no romance, no. Why? What goes on up here, friends? He had a body. My wife has a body. And so it's what goes on up here between your ears, called in your mind, that makes the difference. Are you with me? There are some homosexuals who could give their son a hug and be sexually stimulated. And there are some fathers who are predators who could give their daughters a hug and be sexually stimulated. But it's all because of what goes on up here. And you need to understand that. Origen, one of the early church fathers, 3rd century, was plagued with sexual thoughts, and he thought, if I castrate myself, remove the sexual organs that stimulate sex desire, I'll solve my problem. So he emasculated himself. And lo and behold, he found out to his horror that those sexual desires didn't go away. Do you understand what I'm saying, student? It's right up here. Right up there. Now, the sexual glands do have hormonal functions, and God designed them to stimulate desire. But for a person, it's just like an animal. If you neuter a dog, a male dog, before it has come into its growth and tried to have sex with another dog and eat, it won't be humping your leg after you have it neutered. And little kids, like these male dogs sometimes do. Why? Well, it's a learned... The dog's not having sexual thoughts. Oh, man, I want to have sex with this kid, with your leg. No. It is a learned response. That's quite disgusting if it's your leg. But why is the dog doing that? You ever seen a dog do that? You haven't? Well, just wait until you have little kids crawling around the floor, and then somebody's dog comes up and tries to hump on them. Get out of here! Go on, go on. Not the kid, the dog. So, what I'm saying, students, right up here. This is why, listen to me, this is why it is not smart to fantasize sexual activity. It is not smart to be into pornography. It is not smart to have actual sexual liaisons with other students. Not only is it unbiblical, it creates experience and desires that will never go away. Never! No matter how saved and entirely sanctified you get. And this is why you must make sure that you do not defraud in a dating relationship. do not arouse in yourself or in your date desires, physical desires that cannot be righteously satisfied for marriage, or you're going to defraud mentally. Even if you don't do physically, you're going to defraud mentally. Take from that person, receive from that person, that which really belongs only to the husband or to the wife. Now, where do you hear messages like this? That's tragic. Parents should be, preachers should preach through Thessalonians. I suppose everybody expects somebody else to be telling you. I'm telling you these things biblically because I hope you'll be a wise mom, a wise dad. Protect your kids and train them and teach them. There's a time and place for all things. And here's why we don't do what the world does and have this casual touch, feel, kiss, sex, the whole thing, as if it's just no big deal. It is a big deal in God's eyes. It ought to be a big deal in your eyes.